So a quick little video on putting a lift pump on a GMC Topkick. This applies also to a Chevy Kodiak. This is a 2008 GMC Topkick. Could not find any installation videos for the Air Dog or any other lift pump installation, so I'll do a quick video on the installation that I did on this truck. This is the kit that I got. I got this from DMAX store off the internet. Can't remember what I paid for it. It's probably not that important considering how important the lift pump itself is. I'll show you where I installed it. So on the extra cab Topkick, it's underneath this step right here. There's a plate under the driver's door is where my pump for my air ride seat is, and under the passenger's door is where I installed this. I will tell you that every video I saw for installation of this system said that these plates, these mounting plates, are just the holes for them. This hole, and then there are two holes up at the top, which you can't see. We'll come around to the other side. Those holes are not in the right spot, and this was no exception. So these holes up here and the spacing to this hole here wouldn't make it over the frame rail, so I had to elongate these holes as well as those holes in order to make the spacing wide enough to clear the rail. It was close, but not right, and this is probably an ongoing problem with them. Since I'm not the first person, I'm sure I'm not the last person to have this problem with the Chevy frame rails. So the fuel lines now, they say install it with this side. It's facing here, and the one with the two lines that you have to put on facing the engine. Water separator facing the back. That helps. Now run over, pause this for a minute. We'll go over to where the fuel tank is and the fuel line connections. Before I do that, I just want to say that these fittings going into this hose, man, they just don't go in. I dipped the fitting in oil, I dipped the hose in oil, I put my full body weight on it with the fitting on the ground and my body weight hook grasping the hose ends, and I just could not get them all the way on. So if you are not successful in getting them all the way on, don't sweat it. I got one barb all the way in, and the second barb is sort of flush with the end of the hose. But I doubt they're going to leak because it's only 10 psi. It's actually vacuum on this side, and it's I think it's 10 psi on this side. Alright, so on top of the fuel tank, you've got your fuel filter, and I'm guessing there's, I don't know if there's a pump or sending unit in there. I'm guessing it's just a sending unit because when I turned the key on the truck, when I had all the lines disconnected, no fuel came out of the open line. So the connection right here used to be right there. So you get up under the truck on top of the fuel line, you disconnect this one, and this is the line that goes to the inlet side of the lift pump. There are two lines here, and it's pretty obvious that the bigger of the two is the one that goes to the lift pump. Now you can completely remove this, but I decided to just let it dangle there. It's not hurting anything. Maybe someday if I take the fuel tank down, I'll be able to fish that out. Now on a 2500 and 3500 series truck, the fuel line is nowhere near as long. So on this one, given that we get about 20 feet of hose with the kit, you sort of have to pre-lay out your hose before you start cutting it to length, or you may wind up going back down to the store and getting some more hose. So this one is the fuel supply. It goes to the tank. Now you're noticing another hose here. This hose here is the return back to the filler neck, and I'll show you where that's coming in. My filler neck, of course, is in line with my fuel tank, so let me go back and show you where that is. So this is the line, the fill line. When you go to the gas pump and you go to get your fuel, your diesel, I mean. There it is. Okay, it comes with this T fitting right here, right there. On my truck, there wasn't much of a rubber hose, so I could not splice it into the rubber hose. So instead what I did was I went down to Lowe's and picked up an 1.5" Fernco. Just the right size. It fits over this well, and it fits over the fuel filler line well. So the 1.5" Fernco and this filler line used to go all the way to here. So I cut off from this fuel filler line, I cut off what I needed to in order to fit this in. And so here's the return line from the lift pump. When you're developing too much flow or too much pressure, it returns it back into the tank. This is directional. If you look in here, they've put arrows on this piece to tell you which way should point towards the tank. It's kind of important because there's a little bit of diverter on the end of this side, this guy here, and it diverts the fuel that way. If you put it in backwards, it's going to divert it towards your filler neck, and that is not what you want. So back at the lift pump, what we just looked at was, this was the one going to the top of the fuel tank. This is the supply line from the tank to the lift pump. The second one we looked at is the one that has this 90-degree fitting. It's the smaller of the two fittings on the lift pump, and this is the flow back to the filler neck. Now this other line here is the supply to the engine, and here's where this air dog system and probably all the rest of them are not designed for the top kicks. Alright, so I'm going to go under and hopefully not get this all jumpy. So, that supply line to the engine now, I looped it up over the rail and right into here. This line that you're seeing, the stainless steel line, that was the line that continued through. Where did I leave it? Ah, there it is. I cut it right there. Okay. I cut it with a stubby pipe cutter. That line is the one that goes to the top of the fuel tank that I disconnected over there. We follow that line back towards the front of the engine. This is how I know I had cut the proper fuel line. Towards the front of the engine. There are two little tags right there on two different lines. And they have a picture of a little fuel tank on them. And it tells you it's the fuel line. Now the bigger of the two, again, is the one that goes to the engine. The smaller one is when the injectors are developing too much pressure, I guess it goes back. So the reason I couldn't connect it here with the connectors supplied is because that's a male fitting, and in order to connect it to the side that goes to the engine, it would have needed, the fitting supplied would have needed to be a male fitting, and they only supply these female fittings. So I would not have been able to connect it to this line with the fitting. So instead what I decided to do was cut the line close to where the lift pump is, loop it over the rail, slide it up over there, and put two clamps on it. And I feel confident that two clamps, again, this thing only develops 10 psi. I feel confident those two clamps will hold it in place, and if not, then I'll come back and address it later. Wiring for the lift pump is pretty straightforward. The kit I got, it had two pigtails on it. One pigtail fits the lift pump. That pigtail goes to a pressure gauge, which the kit did not come with, so I need to tape that off and just zip tie that up and out of the way. Now when it came to starting it up, before I get into the electrical, since I'm here, when it came to starting it up, they say that this is a self-priming pump. That's what the directions say, but what I did was I unscrewed the water separator, slowly filled it to the top with diesel fuel, tapped on a little bit, get the air bubbles out of it, shook it around a little bit, put a little more diesel fuel in it, lubed the O-ring at the very top of this like you do a regular oil filter, and I screwed it on. Did the same thing for this. Filled it to the top, tapped on it, got all the air bubbles out, rolled it a little bit side to side, filled it to the very top, and then screwed it on. The reason you see a little diesel fuel under there is I haven't wiped everything down yet. My feeling is by doing that is there's no reason to purge all that air out of the system if you don't have to. I do the same thing when I change the oil on my vehicles. I fill the oil filters up as much as I can, before I screw them on, and then I have less possibility of an air pocket running through stuff. Now, as far as the electrical is concerned, I'm still on the driver's side of the vehicle. So I had run the wiring up through here. They did a nice job with the wiring harness. I'm happy with it. So when the hood closes, this is the stop to hold the hood. There's a huge pocket right here of nothing. It's nowhere near the hood. Plenty of room here. So this is where I mounted the relay and the fuse, just a little bit below it. I ran the wiring up and under. I went across the firewall. There's a support rail right there. I zip tied everything to the support rail. I'll go to the other side and show you